So I think this is going to be another recurring series on my channel at this point. If you didn't watch the last two videos for this, then I'll explain. Basically, I made up some hypothetical gacha game in my head as an excuse to think of some fun lore and draw splash art for muses. General basis is that the world is some fantasy universe taking place in ancient times or whatever for the aesthetic. It's not too serious. Anyways, let's just get started with rolling for the characters I'll do for this video. Okay, and the wheel is back. So for those that don't know, I'll quickly explain. Basically, I'll spin a wheel to get a random muse, and they're divided into 3 rarities: the 5-star, 4-star, and 3-star muses. So the 3-star muses I'm more likely to get, 4-star, a little bit rarer, and then 5-star is the hardest to get. And they're labeled accordingly with the colors. So with that out of the way, let's spin for the 5 muses I'll draw. So the first muse I'm drawing for this video is Changun. Now, Changun is actually an old muse of mine, probably dating like at least 6 years at this point. He was one of the first muses I ever made for a roleplay or something, but he's definitely retired now. Still, he exists and is one I have a soft spot for. Personality-wise, he's very soft-spoken, gentle, and kind. Originally, he was very innocent and naive, but obviously a lot can change in 6 years. So I'd say he's not as innocent and naive as he was when he was first created. And no, it's nothing dirty, don't think that. When I say he's not innocent, I mean in the sense that he can handle the harsh realities of this world a lot better. So that's kind of the general info I have on him. Now, as for his lore in this hypothetical gacha game, I'm thinking he's someone from Rise. And for those who didn't watch either of my other videos on this, I'll explain. So there are 4 sort of realms, kingdoms, whatever I decided to call them. Rise is one of those kingdoms, and it's one under the sea. So you'll see a variety of sea creatures and races under there like Selkies and merfolk. Changyun is a merman in this, so that's why I drew those kinds of ears on him. Now, when I was trying to figure out the pose, I had a hard time. Anatomy is definitely not my strong suit, and you guys can tell. I wanted to try getting better at face angles, so I drew Changyun looking up. It's a bit scuffed, but I won't get better if I just don't do it. As usual, I have a hard time designing clothes just because there are so many ways you can go with it. When I drew Natsuki, who is another character from Rise, I gave her this thing on her dress where she has a knot to resemble a mermaid tail. I decided I was going to carry that for all of the merfolk because it's a really cool detail. I will say when it comes to drawing clothing for male characters, I struggle. I have a lot of male characters, but then I kind of struggle with making things fun and unique. I mean it. I think with females, it's so much easier for me to go crazy. With men, I'm like, okay, so what am I doing? So it's safe to say that, yeah, I struggled on a few other aspects of Changyun's clothing. In my head, Rise people wear flowy clothing in general. It's loose-fitting and also they show a decent amount of skin because, well, they're in the water. Not as much skin as the people in Aliris, which is the kingdom in the sky though. Now, there are some outliers who keep covered up, mainly the Selkies because of their coats. So that's some world building I thought about. Now, since Changyun is a 5-star in this hypothetical game, I had to do special things for his splash art. And by special things, I meant some background and foreground effects. My idea was to do water because he's a merman. The only issue is that I don't know how to draw good water, so it's safe to say that I, in fact, struggle. What's new? I ended up doing some random brush strokes and then outlining a shape in white because that somehow translates to water. Don't ask me how, it just does. So I did a lot of that randomness for the background and foreground elements. It took a bit because I was trying to figure out how to make it look decent, but after that was done, I moved on to the coloring. The coloring wasn't too bad. You will notice that I am using a lot of blues and pinks though. Pink is actually one of Changyun's main colors. Listen, I will pay respects to what my younger self created unless it was that atrocious, like Tsuru's old design before I made my redraw video. So unless a design actually has a lot of room for improvement, I generally won't change it up too much. Also, the pink hair is cute. Anyways, I kept the colors light because Changyun himself isn't the type to wear darker colors unlike most of my muses. In Seirais, you probably have a good variety of colors because at least the merfolk dress in the colors their actual tails are. So that means, for example, Natsuki would have a blue and yellow tail and Changyun would have a blue, pink, and white tail. But that's not to say all merfolk are like that. It's just what most would do. So yeah, more world building. Anyways, I think the speed paint will finish up soon, so let me show the final splash art. And here it is. Overall, I think it turned out pretty nicely and I do like it a lot. I think this is a very good start to the video. Anyways, let's move on to the next character. The next character is Anjong. Now, she happens to be one of my basement muses who I don't use as much, so information I have on her is actually bare bones. So I had to go back and see if I had any notes on her somehow. From her personality, I wrote her out to be calm and seemingly tranquil. She's on the quieter side and is nice, but deep down, she's afraid of many things and is cautious. People don't realize she's like that because she has gotten good at putting up that level-headed mask of hers. Now, I also saw that I connected her with the stars a good amount. A stargazer and someone into astrology, so that's a fun thing. But seriously, I don't remember things about some of my less used characters unless I have notes on them. Some characters get new life breathed into them if I like them enough. Jingyi is an example of this. You may remember him from, I believe, my second video in this series. He didn't have much on him at the time, but recently I revamped his backstory and he actually has ties to Fengshin now. Maybe Anjong will get the same treatment one day when or if the situation calls for it. Now, as for her lore in the game, I decided that I will put her in Akranos. In these videos, I always try to make one character from each of the nations. I had to think long and hard about things. But I always think it would be more interesting if there are some demons in Akranos that are nicer. Not all of them are bloodthirsty maniacs, but the stereotype is definitely there. And before I forget, I will explain Akranos a bit. It's basically the kingdom in the underworld, a completely different realm that is still part of the hypothetical game's overall universe. Normal people can't get into Akranos, and it usually requires an escort or really powerful magic. The demons from Akranos can mostly travel in between the realms though, but most just don't, because outside of Akranos, let's just say people aren't the most accepting because of the history. Even the nicer demons can't really live normal lives outside of Akranos, so they just stay there. So we might be wondering how this all affects someone like Anjong. In my mind, I imagine she's someone who visits the normal realm frequently because she just wants to stargaze and research the stars. She dreams of living there, but she's faced a decent amount of scorn because she's a demon. She probably secretly publishes research papers and hides her identity, or something like that. Though, it's hard for her to hide her demon features completely. Still, she does her best and is kind of living peacefully every time she visits. Now, design-wise, the demon features were really fun to draw for her. I wanted to do something a bit more unique with her horns, so I had mini horns sprouting from her forehead to the top of her head, in addition to her two normal ones. Also, the markings were fun to put on. I imagine all demons have their own markings, so yeah. Now, clothing was where it got challenging because unlike the other nations, I didn't have a specific aesthetic or vibe in my head. Soyeon was my first I drew for this nation, and she was wearing armor because she's meant to be the captain of the royal guard or something like that. Then Jingyi wore something lighter, but he was mostly covered up. I think most people are covered up in this nation, with the exception of a few because succubi and incubi exist. Now with Anjong, I did a random thing with her outfit and I sure hope it works. For a 3-star character, she actually has a surprising amount of detail in her design, so she took a while. Now I can't say the same for some of the other 3-star designs because they're more plain. It makes sense because they are 3 stars. And you'll see with the next two that, yeah, they do get pretty plain. You'll know the rarity of most of these characters, trust me. I don't have too many comments on the coloring and shading process. I think it went pretty smoothly for Anjong. I did have a moment where I was trying to decide if I wanted to go lighter or darker in terms of the colors. I ultimately went lighter for the main dress. I think it still fits with the other characters I've designed so far for Akranos. One of the most important things is making sure the characters look like they belong in the same nation, so that's something. Anyways, I'm sure the speed paint is wrapping up soon now, so I'll go ahead and show the final splash art. Here it is. So overall, it's probably my favorite 3-star design as of now. Anyways, let's get on with the next design. Now, this next one is in a similar boat to Anjong, a basement muse who I don't use as much, so information is limited. But what I do remember is that he's salty and he's a detective of some kind. Now, him and the next character I plan on drawing probably have the shortest sections in this video because their designs were really easy and quick. I decided I will put Eugene in the normal human kingdom, so he just gets some plain clothes because he's a 3-star. But also, I just don't feel like he'd dress as crazy as Hyuk and Yoseng, who are 5-stars from the same kingdom. I still have not thought of a name for the human kingdom, so we're calling it that until further notice, I guess. I'll talk pretty quickly about his lore in the game. It's exactly what you'd think. He works in the investigation bureau or something like that. He's just a normal detective who has to run around and deal with all sorts of crap. He wouldn't be a main character in the overarching story if this game had one. Probably a side character, but hey, we know if this was an actual gacha game, the 5 stars are where it's at, so yeah. Not that I would ever make a gacha game because that's a lot of work and it's a live service game, so more investment. Like, yeah, no. But I do like drawing pretty splash art and thinking of lore, so there's that. Anyways, you probably wouldn't be surprised to hear I spread through the coloring and shading real fast because this is a much simpler design. So I really don't have any comments on it. And because Eugene doesn't have too much about him that sticks out, I don't have as much to yap about in terms of lore either. Now that's an issue on my part for making an underdeveloped character, but he is one of the older characters who wasn't so lucky to stick around for a long time, so yeah. Alright, so here is the final splash art. It's simple, but I mean, nothing too surprising here considering he is meant to be a 3-star. He does have ridiculously long legs though, now that I look back at this. Oh well, let's move on to the next one. Of all of the 3 stars, I would say Hyanjin is the one that probably makes the least sense as one. I have used him a decent amount. He's not a basement muse. I know some information about him, and he plays a significant role sometimes. So we might be asking, why is he a 3-star? Well, because I have to balance out the ratios. You can't have too many 5 stars, guys. So Hyanjin is a 3-star. All you need to know about him is that he's just tired, quiet, and anxious. He probably hasn't slept for days and is probably stressed. He's like one of the bosses in the investigation bureau in this game because yeah. And as you can guess, I decided to just make him a normal human, so he wears mostly plain clothes. He too is someone who wouldn't dress all crazy. Now I did struggle on his hair and face for a hot second because I had no idea what I was doing. Then I kind of just did something. Yeah, this is what happens when you have a bunch of muses. You don't know what to do with like 3/4 of them. So up until the colors, I would say Hyanjin's design was easy. Hyanjin has blue hair, which makes it hard to figure out the colors. I swear, my default for outfits is literally that shade of blue he has on his hair. When you see me get to the coloring, I put him in red and yellow initially. I mean, it makes sense. The colors do look good together. If you go colorful with the hair, you may as well go full on colorful. I like doing this with some designs, and they're nice to look at. I guess if I'm not doing some monochromatic design, it's going to be some colorful explosion instead. Now, here's the problem with this design choice. It doesn't fit Hyanjin's personality. I think a design needs to fit a character's personality. I don't know if it's just me, but one of my design pet peeves is when a design doesn't fit the character's personality. Like you hear about a character's personality, you look at them, then think, with that personality, they would never wear something like that. And a reason isn't given either. Like basically, give a design element some reasons. You can have things that look cool, but don't make it the majority of the design or something. So yeah, That is why I decided to change the colors to what it is on him now. I don't have any other comments on what I did because I'd say this was a pretty straightforward design. So I will quickly show you guys the final splash art. Here it is. I'd say still relatively plain, but it's not too bad at least. Now I have one more character to draw for this, so let's get on to the next one. Okay, and one more. I was secretly hoping to get Yova one day for one of these videos, and the day came, so I was happy about that. I did decide to make him a 4-star in this despite him kind of being a main sometimes, just because of the ratio between 3, 4, and 5-star muses. I just find it poetic we end this video off with him when I started out with Vidinea in the beginning of this. Now, for those that don't know, Yova is Vidinea's younger brother. He's not a blood brother, but he was adopted into her family. And knew exactly how his lore should be if I ever got to drawing him for this. Now, I will quickly explain this for context in case this is the first video you are watching in the series. Aelyris and Akranos used to be at war with each other. They have peace now, but it's just very tense. If there's anyone that hates demons from Akranos the most, it's probably the people from Aelyris. Yova is half demon in this. He had a human mom and a demon father. The mom died during childbirth because, well, that's a half demon right there. It did something to her system. His father didn't want to take care of him, so Yova was basically abandoned outside of Akranos. He doesn't 100% fit in Akranos because he's not full demon, and he doesn't fit anywhere else because he's half demon. But Vidinea's mom was very gracious. She went down from Aelyris one day and found him. She wanted to adopt him despite him being half demon because she's one of the few people up there who is more accepting. She probably also did a lot of research on the history herself and recognizes that times have changed, so yeah. That's how Yova got into his current family, and they do love him. I mean, he's not a stereotypical demon and he's a good person, so there's no reason to hate him. Since he's half demon, I wanted to incorporate that into his design. I decided to give him the eyes, ears, claws, and markings. He doesn't have the horns and wings. Despite not having the wings, he can still fly via powerful magic. He has some abilities alright thanks to being half demon. It's safe to say that people will know Yova is half demon, but I'm sure he's gotten so many questions about why he doesn't have horns from people who thinks he's full demon. And if it seems like there's a lot of demon features on him, it's because those demon genes are very dominant. What can I say? Now, because Yova is in Aelyris now, he dresses in their clothes, hence why I designed them the way they are. It was very interesting to see him show more skin because it made me think if the demons only have the markings on their face or not. I decided they have markings throughout their body, but those marks are covered because they don't show as much skin. In Aelyris, for those that don't know, the reason why they dress like this is because there's not as many threats in the sky, so they don't have to adorn heavy armor. It's also because it keeps them light because they do have to fly. I'm sure there are exceptions here and there, but those people are probably judged heavily. Yova is definitely extremely self-conscious about showing this much skin, mainly because he knows his markings will draw so much attention on top of his demon features. I gave him a cape because Aelyris clothing has huge cutouts in the back to accommodate those wings, but the back cutout is useless for Yova who doesn't have wings. He doesn't like the fact that his back is also exposed, so he wears that cape. There is not a lot of variety in terms of clothing style in Aelyris. They all generally have the same vibe of being short and showing off a lot of skin. Because of the way society is up there, if Yova tried to keep himself covered up completely, he'll probably have even more people talking about him for being weird, and that's the last thing he needs. So he does his best to try and fit in. He could always leave Aelyris, but once you leave, it's hard to get back in. It was probably a horrendously long process for Vidinea's mom to get him into the kingdom so she could officially adopt him. The point of Aelyris is to be the seemingly utopian, perfect society. Except in the pursuit of perfection, it ends up being extremely restrictive. If you aren't rich and well off in that kingdom, it's safe to say you're probably not the happiest there. I yapped so much in that speed paint, but anyways, here is the final splash art. He's hands down my favorite 4-star splash art as of now. You'd think he's a 5-star or something if I added some foreground elements, but nah. So yeah, that's all of the characters for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more from me, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Anyways, maybe I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, bye!